Jake Morrison walked through the long metal halls of Concordia Prime and felt small. The station was huge beyond anything humans had ever built. Every wall stretched up so high that he could barely see the ceiling. Strange lights moved in patterns. He did not understand. The air smelled of things he could not name. Amy Carter walked beside him. She carried a heavy case full of documents and data chips. Her face showed no emotion, but Jake knew she was nervous. They had been preparing for this meeting for 6 months. Everything depended on what happened in the next few hours. The other members of their team followed behind them. There was Dr. Bob Taylor, who knew more about alien biology than anyone on Earth. Captain Lisa Gray wore her dress uniform with all her medals. Pete Johnson carried the technical specifications for human mining equipment. Each of them had practiced their presentations. Dozens of times they reached the great chamber where the Galactic Council met. The doors were 30 feet tall and made of some kind of crystal that showed their reflections in strange colors. Jake straightened his tie and took a deep breath. Amy nodded at him. The doors opened without making any sound. The chamber inside was even more impressive than the halls. It was shaped like a giant bowl with seats arranged in circles going up and up. Hundreds of different alien species sat in those seats. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Jake had trouble figuring out which end was their head dot. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform with a single chair. That was where Speaker Thainvel sat. He was 12 feet tall and made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through his body in slow waves. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music played on broken glass. Jake and his team took their places at a small table near the platform. The table was sized for humans, which made it look like children's furniture in the vast space. Jake could hear alien voices whispering in languages he did not recognize. Some of the sounds were not really voices at all, but clicks and hums and electronic tones. Speaker Thainvel raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber became silent. The representatives of the species called humans have requested time to address this council, he said. His voice carried easily through the huge space without any need for amplification. We will hear their petition. Jake stood up. He felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some of those eyes were not eyes at all, but sensing organs he could not understand. He activated the holographic display that showed a map of local space. Honored members of the council, Jake began. His voice sounded thin and small after the crystal music of the speaker. Humanity comes before you today seeking fair representation. In galactic commerce, we have been part of the galactic community for 50 years. In that time, we have proven ourselves to be reliable trading partners and peaceful neighbors. He gestured to the star map. 3 systems glowed with soft blue light. We request mining rights to these uninhabited systems. Our surveys show rich deposits of rare metals that we can extract without harming any existing ecosystems. In return, we offer our expertise in biological sciences and our unique perspectives on problem solving. Dr. Taylor stood and began explaining the valuable medical discoveries that human scientists had made by studying Earth's diverse life forms. Captain Gray outlined humanity's peaceful record and their willingness to help maintain galactic security. Pete Johnson showed technical innovations that could improve mining efficiency by 40%. But Jake could see that the aliens were not impressed. Some of them were not even paying attention. A group of insect-like beings in the upper rows were grooming each other. Several of the more human-looking species were reading documents that had nothing to do with the presentation. When the human presentation ended, Speaker Thainvel made a sound that might have been laughter. It sounded like wind chimes in a storm. The young species wishes to play with the tools of their elders, he said. Light pulsed through his crystal body in patterns that Jake somehow knew meant amusement. Counselor Zek then stood up from his seat in the second row. He looked almost human, except for his pale blue skin and the extra arms that folded against his sides. "Speaker Thainvel speaks wisdom," he said. "These humans have existed for what? A few thousand years of recorded history. They have had spaceflight for barely a century. They know nothing of the deep currents that move through galactic civilization." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Amy's hand moved slightly toward her weapon, but she stopped herself. This was a diplomatic mission, not a military operation. Zek then continued speaking. "They ask for 3-star systems, as if they were asking for 3 stones from a beach. They do not understand that those systems lie along trade routes that have been established for millions of years. They cannot comprehend the delicate balance of resources that keeps thousands of species in harmony." Other council members began making sounds of agreement. Some clapped with hands or tentacles or clicking mandibles. Others made musical tones or electronic beeps. The chamber filled with alien sounds of approval. Speaker Thainvel raised his hand again, and the noise stopped. "The council recognizes the enthusiasm of the human species," he said. Light moved through his crystal form in slow spirals. "However, their request shows a fundamental misunderstanding of their position in the cosmic order." Jake's heart sank, but he tried one more time. "With respect, Speaker Thainvel, we believe that our unique perspective and our rapid technological development make us valuable partners in silence," the speaker said. The word rang through the chamber like a bell. "The council has heard enough of human arrogance for one day." Councillor Zekten stood again. "Perhaps the humans need a lesson in humility," he said. "We offer them mining rights to the 4th moon of Kalos Prime. In exchange, they will provide unlimited access to their homeworlds, biological diversity for scientific study." Jake knew that moon. It was a barren rock with barely enough gravity to hold an atmosphere. The biological samples they wanted would include genetic material from every species on Earth, including humans. It was an insult disguised as an offer. Dr. Taylor leaned forward. "That moon has been strip-mined already," he whispered. "There's nothing there but empty tunnels and toxic waste." Amy looked at Jake with questioning eyes. Captain Gray's face had turned red with anger. Pete Johnson was staring at his hands clenched into fists on the table. Zek then was still talking. "Of course, we understand that such generosity might be difficult for the humans to accept. Their primitive understanding of galactic economics makes it hard for them to see the value of this arrangement. But with time and proper guidance, they will learn to be grateful for whatever scraps the civilized species choose to share with them." Several council members made sounds that Jake realized were laughter. Not the kind of laughter that came from joy, but the cruel laughter of bullies mocking someone weaker than themselves. The sound echoed through the vast chamber and seemed to go on forever. Jake felt something break inside him. Not his resolve or his determination, but something deeper. It was his faith that reasonable beings could work together for mutual benefit. It was his belief that showing respect would earn respect in return. It was his hope that humanity could find its place in the galaxy through peaceful means. He stood up slowly. The laughter died away as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. Amy started to say something, but Jake held up his hand to stop her. "We came here in good faith," Jake said. His voice was steady and cold. "Clearly that was our mistake." He turned away from the platform and walked toward the great crystal doors. Amy gathered up their documents and followed him. Dr. Taylor, Pete Johnson, and Captain Gray fell in behind. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence of the chamber. Behind them, Jake could hear whispers starting up in a dozen different languages. He did not look back. The crystal doors opened silently, and the human delegation walked through them into the metal corridors beyond. As the doors closed behind them, Jake heard Counselor Zekthan's voice one last time. "How adorable," the alien said. "The children are having a tantrum." Admiral Lisa Brooks sat in her office deep inside the Pentagon and read Jake Morrison's report for the third time. The words did not get any better with repetition. She set the tablet down on her desk and rubbed her temples where a headache was. Starting to build. 50 years of careful diplomacy had just gone up in smoke. 50 years of humanity trying to prove they belonged among the stars. 50 years of swallowing pride and accepting insults and working twice as hard as anyone else just to get a seat at the table. Her aide, Colonel Frank Miller, knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. His face was grim. "Admiral, the news is already spreading," he said. "Every human colony from here to the outer rim knows what happened at Concordia Prime." Lisa nodded. She had expected this. News traveled fast in space, and bad news traveled even faster. "What's the reaction?" "Anger mostly," Frank said. "The colonists on Kepler Station are talking about declaring independence from the Galactic Trade Network. The mining crews on Titan want to arm their ships. Everyone's asking the same question, which is, what are we going to do about it?" Lisa stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the Potomac River. Somewhere up there, beyond the blue sky, Jake Morrison was on his way home in disgrace. His diplomatic career was probably over, all because he had tried to get humanity a fair deal. "Get me a secure line to President Hayes," she said. "Then call an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs. This is bigger than just a diplomatic incident now." On Concordia Prime, the Galactic Council was still in session. Speaker Thainvel had called for an emergency debate about what the alien politicians were calling the human insult. The great chamber buzzed with angry voices in 100 different languages. Counselor Zek then stood at the center of the platform where Jake Morrison had made his presentation hours earlier. "Fellow beings," he said in his smooth diplomatic voice, "what we witnessed today was not just disrespect. It was a direct challenge to the authority of this council and the order we have maintained for 10,000 years." The insect-like Vorthans clicked their approval from the upper rows. Their Prime Minister Calix spoke through the electronic translator that made his high voice sound almost human. "The collective agrees with Councilor Sekthen. This human arrogance cannot be allowed to spread to other primitive species. If word gets out that any race can simply walk away from council authority, where will it end?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many of the older species remembered when they had been young and eager and full of pride. They had all learned their place in the cosmic order eventually. The humans would learn theirs too. Speaker. Thainvel's crystal form pulsed with angry red light. "The humans forget that they are guests in our galaxy," he said. "Guests who have been granted privileges far beyond what their brief existence in primitive technology should earn them. They have spaceflight, yes, but only because they found abandoned Kelter ships on their moon. They have faster than light communication, but only because the Zephyrians shared the technology out of curiosity about their strange biology." The Keltor representative made a sound like grinding stone. His species had been extinct for 3,000 years, and they're ancient. Automated ships still wandered the galaxy. Finding those ships had given humanity their first real starships, but the aliens had never let them forget it was borrowed technology. "What do you propose, Speaker?" asked Ambassador Vel 9 of the crystalline hegemony. Her species were distant, cousins of Thainvel, but smaller and more delicate. "Surely the humans will return once they realize their error?" Zekthan laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Oh, they will return," he said, "but not as equals making demands. They will return as supplicants begging for forgiveness, and we will make sure they understand the cost of their arrogance." Over the next few hours, the Council passed a series of resolutions with overwhelming support. Human trade vessels would be denied access to all Council-controlled space lanes. Human colonies would be cut off from the galactic supply network. Most importantly, all human expansion beyond their home system would be blocked by military force if necessary. The vote was not even close. Only 12 species out of the 400, and 37 represented on the council, voted against the sanctions. Most of those were small, peaceful races who traded regularly with humans and valued their medical knowledge. The Aquarian delegate Nurs Cole spoke for the small opposition. "This seems excessive," he said through the water-filled speaking chamber. His species required. The humans showed disrespect, yes, but they are young. Perhaps with time and patience, we can bring them back into the fold without such harsh measures. Counselor Zekthen's 4 eyes focused on the aquatic being with contempt. "Patience," he said. "We have shown them patience for 50 years. We allowed them to establish colonies when they barely understood stellar navigation. We permitted them to join trade networks when they had nothing of value to offer. We even gave them a voice in minor council proceedings, despite their obvious intellectual limitations." Prime Minister Kallax's electronic voice joined the chorus of anger. "The Vorthen Collective has extensive data on human psychology. They are driven by emotion rather than logic. They value individual achievement over collective harmony. They are aggressive, territorial, and unpredictable. These traits make them dangerous if left unchecked." Speaker Thainvel stood to his full 12-foot height. Light cascaded through his crystal body in patterns that conveyed absolute authority. "The council has spoken," he said. "Let the humans learn what happens when children challenge their elders." Back on Earth, President Richard Hayes sat in the Oval Office, listening to Admiral Brooks explain the situation. His face grew darker with each detail of the sanctions. By the time she finished, he was gripping the arms of his chair, so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "How long before these sanctions take effect?" he asked. "Already happening, sir," Admiral Brooks replied. "Our merchant ships are being turned away from Proxima Station as we speak. The colony on Kepler 442b just lost contact with their supply convoy. The aliens aren't wasting any time." President Hayes stood and walked to the window that looked out over the White House lawn. In the distance, he could see the Washington Monument reaching toward the stars that humanity was now forbidden to reach. "How many people are we talking?" "About 6 million humans in off-world colonies, sir. Another 2 million on deep space stations and exploration vessels. Most of them depend on regular supply runs for everything from medical supplies to basic food." The president turned back to face her. "How long can they survive without those supplies?" Admiral Brooks consulted her tablet. "The larger colonies have about 3 months of reserves. The smaller outposts and research stations may be 6 weeks. After that, ... She didn't need to finish the sentence. "And our options? Diplomatically, we could send Jake Morrison back to Gravel and beg for forgiveness. Maybe offer them even more than they wanted originally. Trade away more of our sovereignty for the privilege of being their servants. And militarily?" Admiral Brooks was quiet for a long moment. "Sir, we have 47 ships that could charitably be called warships. Most of them are converted cargo haulers with missile pods bolted on. The Galactic Council has over 10,000 vessels, including dreadnoughts, that outmass our entire fleet by a factor of 50. President Hayes nodded grimly. "So our choice is between surrender and suicide." "Those appear to be the only options, sir," Admiral Brooks said. But there was something in her tone that suggested she might have other ideas. The president studied her face carefully. Lisa Brooks had been his military advisor for 8 years. She had never met a problem she couldn't find a solution for, no matter how impossible it seemed. "Admiral, is there something you're not telling me?" "Sir, there might be a third option, but it would require resources, time, and absolute secrecy. And it would mean accepting that our relationship with the Galactic Council is over permanently." "Go on." Admiral Brooks took a deep breath. 6 months ago, I initiated a classified research project codenamed Defiance. The initial findings suggest that human engineering and tactical thinking might not be as primitive as the aliens believe. If we could buy ourselves time, maybe a year or two, we might be able to level the playing field. President Hayes sat back. Down. Outside his window, the sun was setting over a world they had just learned it was alone in a hostile galaxy. Tell me about Project Defiance, Admiral. Tell me everything. Commander Tony Mitchell floated in zero gravity as he watched the final hull plates being welded into place on humanity's first real warship. The UE's Retribution stretched out before him like a metal mountain 3 times longer than anything humans had built before. Its dark gray hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making the ship look like a hole cut out of space itself. Months had passed since the humiliation at Concordia Prime. 6 months since the Galactic Council had cut humanity off from the stars and expected them to come crawling back, begging for scraps. The aliens thought humans were licking their wounds and learning their place in the cosmic order. They were wrong. Tony activated his communication implant. Admiral Brooks, this is Mitchell reporting from Construction Base 7. The Retribution is ready for initial systems testing. Admiral Brooks' voice crackled in his ear through the encrypted channel. Excellent, Commander. How are the crew quarters coming along? Better than expected, ma'am. Dr. Kim's psychological studies were right on target. The crew spaces are designed for long deployments with maximum efficiency and minimum stress. We can keep a full complement battle ready for months if necessary. Tony pushed off from a support beam and glided toward the ship's bridge section. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see technicians installing the last of the control systems. Everything was human-built using principles, reverse-engineered from alien technology, but improved with human innovation. The key breakthrough had come from Dr. Susan Kim's research into alien psychology. She had discovered that most spacefaring species thought in terms of massive ships with overwhelming firepower. They built dreadnoughts that could destroy planets and expected their enemies to do the same. But humans had learned warfare from fighting each other on a small, crowded planet, where resources were limited and every advantage had to be earned. Tony called a familiar voice from behind him. He turned to see Captain Kevin Walsh approaching in his own spacesuit. Kevin commanded the first squadron of humanity's new fighter craft, and his grin was visible even through his helmet visor. Kevin, how did the test flight go? Tony asked. Better than we hoped, Kevin replied. The new fighters are incredible. Remember those old Vorthan interceptors we analyzed? These little beauties can run circles around them. Literally, I just finished a mock dogfight against a computer simulation of the Zephyrian patrol ship. The computer had to reset the scenario 3 times because it couldn't believe the results. Tony nodded. The human fighters were smaller and more agile than anything in the galactic fleet. They used a revolutionary new power system that Dr. Michel Torres had developed by combining human fusion technology with alien energy storage methods. The result was a ship that could outrun and outmaneuver anything the Council had. They made their way to the Retribution's main hangar bay, where dozens of the new fighters hung in neat rows like sleeping birds of prey. Each one was painted matte black, with no identifying marks or serial numbers. If humanity was going to fight, they would do it from the shadows until they were ready to step into the light. Dr. Torres was waiting for them in the hangar. She was a small woman with graying hair and intense brown eyes that never seemed to rest. In her hands, she held a weapon that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Gentlemen, she said with satisfaction in her voice, I'd like you to meet humanity's answer to Vorthan plasma technology. Tony took the weapon and was surprised by how light it was. Traditional plasma rifles were bulky things that required power packs the size of briefcases. This device felt no heavier than an old-fashioned assault rifle. How did you manage to shrink it down so much? Kevin asked. Dr. Torres smiled. The Vorthans generate plasma by heating gas to extreme temperatures in massive containment fields. It works, but it's incredibly inefficient. We took a different approach. Instead of trying to contain the plasma, we learned to control it. The weapon generates the plasma beam at the moment of firing using a microfusion reaction. No storage, no containment, no massive power requirements. She gestured to a target at the far end of the hangar. Care to try it out? Tony aimed the weapon and pulled the trigger. A brilliant blue beam lanced across the hangar and struck the target dead center. Where the beam hit, the fixed steel plate simply vanished, leaving a hole with edges that glowed white-hot. Impressive, Kevin said. How does it compare to standard Vorthan weapons? Twice the range, 3 times the power, and 1/10 the weight, Dr. Torres replied. Plus, it can fire continuously for hours without overheating. The Vorthans have too. Pause between shots to let their containment systems cool down. Admiral Brooks arrived in the hangar just as they finished the demonstration. She wore the expression of someone carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, which Tony supposed was literally true. The fate of humanity rested on projects like this one. Doctor, how many of these weapons can we produce? She asked. With our current manufacturing capacity, about 50,000 units per month, Dr. Torres replied. But that's assuming we can. Keep the production lines secret. If the Council finds out what we're doing, they won't, Admiral Brooks said firmly. Every facility is hidden beyond the outer planets where their surveillance can't reach. Every worker has been cleared at the highest levels. Every component is manufactured in a different location and assembled by automated systems. Tony looked around the hangar at all the weapons and ships and felt a mixture of pride and fear. Pride because humanity had accomplished something incredible in just 6 months. Fear because he knew they would have to use all of it very soon. Admiral, he said, what's the latest intelligence from the Council? Brooks' expression grew even more serious. They're getting impatient. Our colonies are suffering, but they're holding on longer than the aliens expected. The Council thought we'd be begging for mercy by now. Instead, our people are finding ways to survive on their own. She activated a holographic display that showed the current status of human settlements throughout local space. Red dots marked colonies that were completely cut off from Earth. Yellow dots showed settlements that were barely hanging on with local resources. Green dots indicated the few places where humans had found ways to thrive despite the blockade. The colony on Kepler 442b has become completely self-sufficient, Brooks continued. They've developed new agricultural techniques that let them grow food in the local soil. The mining station at Wolf 359 discovered a deposit of rare Earth elements that they're using to build their own manufacturing base. Even the research outpost at Gliese 667c has found ways to synthesize medical supplies from local flora. Kevin whistled softly. The aliens wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Instead, they taught us how to survive without them. Exactly, Brooks said, and that's what terrifies them. The Council has spent 10,000 years convincing younger species that they need galactic civilization to survive. We're proving them wrong. Dr. Torres looked up from her weapon. How much longer do we have? Intelligence suggests the Council will move to more direct action within the next few weeks, Brooks replied. They can't afford to let other species see that their blockade failed. They'll send a fleet to Earth with an ultimatum. Tony felt his stomach tighten. What kind of ultimatum? Complete surrender. They'll demand that we dismantle our space program, hand over all our technology, and accept permanent oversight from Council representatives. Basically, they want to turn us into a protectorate with no rights and no freedom. The hangar fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems and the distant sound of construction work. Everyone understood what that meant. Humanity would become slaves and all, but named forever dependent on alien masters who viewed them as barely evolved animals. And if we refuse? Kevin asked quietly. Admiral Brooks met his eyes. Then they'll demonstrate what happens to species who challenge Council authority. They'll start by destroying our orbital installations. Then they'll target major cities on Earth itself. They won't stop until we submit or until there aren't enough humans left to matter. Dr. Torres set down her weapon and clenched her fists. How many ships are we talking about? Intelligence estimates between 200 and 300 vessels, Brooks replied, including at least 50 dreadnoughts. It's enough firepower to glass every major population center on Earth. Tony looked at the rows of fighters hanging in the hangar. Humanity had maybe 100 combat-ready vessels, counting everything from the Retribution down to single-seat interceptors. Against 300 alien warships, it seemed hopeless. But then he remembered something his grandfather had told him about the old wars on Earth. Numbers weren't everything in combat. Training mattered. Tactics mattered. Most of all, determination mattered. The aliens had superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to surrender. Admiral, Tony said, when they come, how will we know? Brooks smiled grimly. Oh, we'll know, Commander. They'll announce themselves with all the pomp and ceremony they can manage. The Council wants to make sure everyone in the galaxy sees what happens to species who forget their place. She turned to address all of them. In the next few weeks, humanity will face its greatest test. We can surrender and live as slaves, or we can fight and maybe die as free beings. But if we choose to fight, we're going to. The warning came at 0347 hours Earth Standard Time, when long-range sensors detected the massive energy signatures approaching the edge of the solar system. Admiral Lisa Brooks was already awake in her command chair aboard the UE's Retribution when the alert reached her. She had been expecting this moment for weeks. Report, she said calmly as the bridge crew rushed to their stations around her. Lieutenant. Commander Sarah Lay checked her instruments with steady hands, despite the magnitude of what they were seeing. Admiral, we have 57 capital ships dropping out of hyperspace at the heliopause. Configuration matches Zephyrian dreadnought patterns with Vorthan escort vessels. Captain Dan Murphy at the tactical station was already running battle calculations. They're maintaining standard fleet formation, ma'am. No defensive posture. They don't appear to be expecting any resistance. Brooks nodded grimly. Of course they weren't expecting resistance. Why would they? As far as the Galactic Council knew, humanity had 47 converted cargo ships and no real military capability. The idea that humans might have built actual warships in secret would never occur to beings who measured technological progress in millennia rather than months. Signal all vessels, Brooks ordered. Implement Operation Hornet's Nest. Maintain communications. Silence until I give the word. Throughout the solar system, hidden human ships began moving into position. They emerged from behind asteroids and gas giant moons, where they had been waiting in power-down stealth mode for weeks. The alien fleet would detect them eventually, but not until it was too late. On the lead, Zephyrian Dreadnought Supreme Commander Keth Moore reviewed the ultimatum he would deliver to the primitive humans. His crystalline form pulsed with satisfaction. As he thought about how quickly this would be resolved, a show of overwhelming force followed by unconditional surrender. The humans would learn their place, and the galaxy would see what happened to species who challenged Council authority. Commander, his aide reported, we are receiving a transmission from the third planet. Put it through, Kethmore replied. He expected to hear pleas for mercy, or perhaps desperate attempts at negotiation. What he heard instead was a calm professional voice that showed no fear at all. This is Admiral Lisa Brooks of the United Earth Space Force, the voice said. You are trespassing in human space. Turn around and leave immediately, or face the consequences. Kethmore's crystal body flashed with colors that indicated amusement. "Respond," he told his communications officer. "Tell the human admiral that she is in no position to make demands. Inform her that she has 1 hour to prepare for the arrival of council representatives who will take custody of her planet and all human assets." But Admiral Brooks was no longer listening to alien ultimatums. She was watching her tactical display as dozens of green dots appeared around the enemy fleet. Her ships were in position, and the aliens still had no idea what was about to happen. "All vessels, this is Admiral Brooks," she transmitted on the encrypted human frequency. "Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember that the galaxy is watching." She took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change everything. Execute, execute, execute. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human fleet attacked from every direction at once, using tactics no alien species had ever seen. Instead of the massive formations that galactic warfare had used for thousands of years, the humans swarmed like angry insects around capital ships that suddenly seemed slow and clumsy. Commander Sarah Lay led the first fighter attack against the Zephyrian flagship. Her squadron of 12 interceptors dove toward the massive dreadnought from the direction of the sun, where their approach would be hardest to detect. The alien ship was 3 miles long and bristled with enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but it had never been designed to fight enemies that moved like humans. "Phoenix leader to all units," Sarah transmitted. "Target their sensor arrays. First, make them blind before we make them dead." Her fighters spread out in a pattern that would have been impossible for alien pilots, who were trained to maintain rigid formations. Each human ship attacked from a different angle at a different speed, using weapons the Zephyrians had never encountered before. The concentrated plasma beams from Dr. Torres' new rifles sliced through alien armor like it was made of paper. The Zephyrian gunners tried to track the fast-moving human ships, but their targeting systems were designed for battles between capital ships, not dogfights with single-seat fighters. By the time they realized what was happening, half their sensors were gone, and human ships were swarming all over their hull. Captain Kevin Walsh commanded the second wave of the attack. His squadron targeted the Vorthan cruisers that formed the alien fleet's screening force. The insect-like aliens were known for their technological superiority and logical tactical thinking, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. "Remember the briefings," Kevin transmitted to his pilots. "These bugs think in terms of hive behavior. They expect us to act like a single organism with predictable patterns. Show them what individual initiative looks like." His fighters scattered in all directions, attacking targets of opportunity with no apparent coordination. To the Vorthan commanders, it looked like chaos, but it was actually a carefully planned strategy based on human experience with asymmetric warfare. Each pilot was free to improvise and adapt as the situation developed. The results were devastating. Vorthan plasma cannons designed to hit large, slow targets missed the darting human fighters completely. Their defensive systems were overwhelmed by attacks coming from too many directions at once. Within minutes, 3 cruisers were burning wrecks, and the rest were falling back in disorder. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Brooks watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The aliens had superior numbers and firepower, but they were fighting the last war, while humanity was already fighting the next one. "Admiral," Captain Murphy reported, "the enemy flagship is trying to break away from the main engagement." "Shall I order pursuit?" "Negative," Brooks replied. "Let them run. I want survivors to carry word back to the Council about what happened here." But Supreme Commander Kethmore had no intention of running. His pride and his position in the Council hierarchy depended on completing this mission successfully. He ordered his remaining ships to form a defensive circle around the dreadnoughts. and prepare for a final assault on Earth itself. If we cannot capture the human homeworld, we will destroy it, he declared to his fleet. The Council must see that. Their authority cannot be challenged. The massive Zephyrian ships began charging their planet-killing weapons. Each dreadnought carried enough firepower to crack a world's crust and turn its surface into molten slag. If they reached Earth, the human species would be extinct within hours. But Admiral Brooks had prepared for this possibility, too. As the alien, ships focused their attention on the planet below human reinforcements arrived from the outer system. The battleship UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace behind the enemy formation, followed by a dozen heavy cruisers that had been hidden in the asteroid belt. "This is Captain Lisa Gray aboard the Defiance," came the transmission. "Admiral, we have target locks on all enemy capital ships. Permission to engage?" Brooks looked at the tactical display one more time. The alien fleet was trapped between her forces and the new arrivals with no clear escape route. Their formation was broken, their screening ships were destroyed or fleeing, and their commanders were probably in shock at the realization that they had walked into a carefully prepared trap. "Permission." "Granted, Captain," Brooks said. And this. The human capital ships opened fire with weapons that made the alien commanders question. 3 weeks after the battle, Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of Concordia, prime once again, but everything had changed. The same alien beings that had dismissed him with contempt now stepped aside respectfully as he passed. The same voices that had mocked humanity's ambitions now spoke in hushed tones about the species that had defeated the Council's greatest fleet. This time Jake was not alone. Admiral Lisa Brooks walked beside him, wearing her dress uniform with the new medals she had earned in the solar system battle. Behind them came an honor guard of human Marines, whose presence sent a clear message about humanity's new status in galactic affairs. Colonel Peter Stone served as their military advisor and intelligence chief. He had studied every alien species in the Council for months, preparing for this moment. Captain Lisa Gray commanded the escort squadron of human warships that now orbited the station as a reminder of what had happened to the last fleet that threatened humanity. The Great Chamber looked exactly the same as it had 6 months earlier, but the atmosphere was completely different. Where before there had been casual arrogance and dismissive laughter, now there was nervous tension and careful politeness. The hundreds of alien representatives watched the human delegation with expressions that ranged from curiosity to fear to grudging respect. Fainvel waited at the center of the chamber. His 12-foot crystalline form no longer pulsed with the confident authority that Jake remembered. Instead, the patterns of light moving through his body seemed subdued, almost apologetic. When he spoke, his voice lacked the musical arrogance that had characterized their first meeting. "Ambassador Morrison, Admiral Brooks," he said formally, "the Galactic Council welcomes your return to these chambers. We hope that recent ... misunderstandings ... can be resolved through peaceful dialogue." Jake took his place at the same small table where he had made his original presentation. But this time, he was not asking for anything. This time, he was here to deliver terms. "Speaker Thainvel," Jake replied with polite coldness, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us. As you know, recent events have significantly altered the relationship between humanity and the Galactic Council. We are here today to establish a new framework for that relationship." Counselor Zekthon shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The pale blue alien who had laughed at human ambitions now looked like someone facing an unpleasant medical procedure. "Ambassador Morrison," he said carefully, "the Council acknowledges that certain actions taken in response to your previous visit may have been ... excessive. Perhaps we can find a mutually beneficial arrangement." Admiral Brooks activated a holographic display that showed the current military situation throughout local space. Red markers indicated the positions of human battle fleets that had been secretly deployed during the weeks following the solar system engagement. The display made it clear that humanity now controlled the approaches to dozens of star systems, including several major trade routes. "The situation has indeed changed," Brooks said in a voice that carried the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "Humanity is no longer seeking accommodation within the existing galactic order. We are establishing our own sphere of influence, and we expect that sphere to be respected." Prime Minister Kallax of the Vorthan Collective spoke through his electronic translator. His words carried a note of grudging admiration that would have been impossible before the battle. "Admiral Brooks, the tactical analysis of your recent victory has been illuminating. The collective acknowledges that we may have underestimated human military capabilities." "You underestimated more than our military capabilities," Jake replied. "You underestimated our determination, our adaptability, and our refusal to accept a subordinate position in the galaxy. Those errors in judgment led directly to the current situation." Colonel Stone stepped forward and placed a data crystal on the table between the human delegation and the alien representatives. "The terms for a new relationship between humanity and the Galactic Council," he announced. "These are not negotiable." Speaker Thanevel's crystalline hand trembled slightly as he picked up the crystal. As he reviewed its contents, the patterns of light in his body shifted through colors that Jake's briefings had taught him indicated shock and dismay. "These terms are quite comprehensive," the speaker said slowly. "Full council membership with voting rights equivalent to the senior species. Exclusive human control over 12 star systems, including mining and colonization rights. Removal of all restrictions on human space travel and trade, and ... He paused as he reached the final item on the list. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "A formal apology from the Council to humanity, broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy." The chamber erupted in angry voices as hundreds of alien representatives reacted to the human demands. Some species called the terms outrageous, while others wondered aloud if humanity might be willing to negotiate. But Jake noticed that none of them were laughing anymore. Ambassador Vel9 of the Crystalline Hegemony stood to address the chamber. Her delicate crystal form sparkled with patterns that indicated deep concern. "These terms represent a fundamental shift in galactic power structures," she said. "How can we be certain that humanity will honor agreements made under such circumstances?" Dr. Patricia Collins stepped forward. She had replaced Dr. Taylor as humanity's chief science advisor, and her reputation for innovative research preceded her throughout the galaxy. "Ambassador Vel9," she said, "humanity offers more than just military strength. We bring new perspectives on technology, medicine, and exploration that can benefit all member species." She activated her own holographic display showing a series of scientific breakthroughs that human researchers had achieved since the Council's blockade began. New medical treatments derived from Earth's biodiversity. Revolutionary manufacturing techniques that could reduce production costs by orders of magnitude. Most impressively, a new form of faster-than-light communication that was twice as fast and half as expensive as existing galactic networks. "The Council cut us off from galactic civilization hoping to teach us our place," Dr. Collins continued. "Instead, you taught us to rely on ourselves and to innovate beyond what any species thought possible. We are offering to share these innovations with any species willing to treat us as equals." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity was not just demanding respect, they were offering genuine benefits to those who granted it. The carrot-and-stick approach was something the galaxy had never seen from a species so young. Counselor Zick then cleared his throat nervously. "Dr. Collins, these scientific advances are impressive, but surely they could be shared within the existing framework without such dramatic political changes." Jake stood up and fixed the alien politician with a stare that carried all the authority of Earth's newfound strength. Counselor Zek, then 6 months ago, you laughed at our ambitions and called you as children having a tantrum. Today, human fleets control a dozen star systems, and our technology surpasses your own in multiple fields. Do you really want to find out what we can accomplish in another 6 months if you continue to oppose us? The threat was delivered in a calm, professional tone that somehow made it more frightening than any amount of shouting would have been. Everyone in the chamber understood that humanity had already proven its ability to back up its words with action. Speaker Thane Vel consulted quietly with his advisors for several minutes before addressing the chamber again. The council will need time to consider these proposals, he said. Such significant changes to galactic governance cannot be decided hastily. Admiral Brooks smiled coldly. Of course, Speaker. You have 48 hours to reach a decision. After that, humanity will assume that the Council prefers the current state of armed tension to peaceful coexistence. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Jake felt a moment of satisfaction that went beyond mere victory. For the first time since humanity had reached for the stars, they were negotiating as equals rather than supplicants. The species that had once mocked their ambitions now feared their capabilities, but he also felt a weight of responsibility. Humanity had earned its place at the galactic table through strength, but keeping that place would require wisdom. The galaxy was watching to see what kind of neighbors humans would prove to be. Captain Gray met them at the docking bay, where their escort ships waited. "How did it go, sir?" she asked. "Better than expected," Jake replied. "They're scared, but they're also smart enough to recognize a good deal when they see one. I think we'll have our answer within 24 hours. Admiral Brooks nodded in agreement. The Council spent 10,000 years as the ultimate authority in this galaxy. Accepting that humanity is now their equal will be difficult, but the alternative is watching us become their superior. As their ships departed, Concordia Prime Jake looked back at the massive station through the viewport. Somewhere in those crystal corridors, alien politicians were making decisions that would shape the future of galactic civilization. For the first time in their species' history, humans would have a real voice in those decisions. The age of human subservience was truly over. The age of human leadership was about to begin.